They thought their secret would remain buried forever, hidden behind lies, locked away in half-truths, covered with the dust of arrogance. They moved as if no one would ever notice, as if the weight of their deceit would never catch up to them. But truth has a way of clawing through shadows. It does not need your effort, it reveals itself in time. The moment it came into the light, they froze, not because of the exposure itself, but because something greater stood behind you, a presence they could not understand, a protection they could not challenge. They felt it before they could name it, the invisible hand shielding you, the force that refused to let their schemes destroy you. Their fear was not of you alone. Their fear was of what stood with you. Your divine protector was not loud. It did not roar, it did not announce itself with trumpets. It simply lingered, unseen yet undeniable. You felt it in the way you survived nights you should have broken. You saw it in the way doors opened when every path looked blocked. You heard it in the silence after betrayal, when instead of losing everything, you found strength that was not your own. They saw it too, though they would never admit it. They noticed how every attempt to corner you collapsed in their hands. They saw how every weapon they threw bounced back toward them. That is why they panicked when the secret was exposed. Because it revealed you were never standing alone. You were always wrapped in something eternal. The psychology of fear is simple. People fear what they cannot control, and nothing terrifies a manipulator more than divine protection. They can study your patterns, exploit your fears, weaponize your doubts, but they cannot touch what is untouchable. They cannot manipulate destiny. They cannot trick a force that sees through their games before they even invent them. They realized too late that your survival was not luck, it was design. You were carried through storms they thought would drown you. You were lifted in silence when they prayed for your collapse. You did not crumble under betrayal, and they could not figure out why. That confusion turned into terror the moment the truth came out. Their schemes failed because something higher was already watching. The secret itself was a mirror, and when it cracked, they had to see themselves for what they truly were. Every lie, every manipulation, every act of cruelty stood naked under the light. Their arrogance dissolved when they realized the universe had been keeping receipts. Exposure is always brutal, but exposure paired with divine presence is devastating. Because it shows them their time is over, their control is finished, their illusion is dead. They cannot explain away your survival. They cannot rationalize your calm. They cannot dismiss your strength. The protector they cannot touch is the one thing that silences even the boldest schemer. They fear it because it reminds them they are not the highest power in the room. Your silence was not weakness, it was alignment. While they wasted energy covering lies, you stayed still. You let time work in your favor. You did not chase revenge, you waited. And in the waiting, the protector did the work you could not. That is the true terror for them. You did not even have to fight to win. You did not have to expose them, scream at them, or break yourself in retaliation. The exposure came naturally, as if the universe decided the time had come. They wanted to believe they had power over your destiny. The moment the secret broke and the protector revealed itself, they realized they were wrong. Their panic was proof of how fragile their arrogance really was. There is a strange beauty in watching arrogance collapse under the weight of its own illusion. They thought they held the crown, but the crown dissolved in their hands. They thought they built walls around you, but those walls turned into mirrors that reflected only their fear. The divine protector scared them because it reminded them of something they hate, that justice exists beyond their control. They could not bribe it, silence it, or manipulate it. They had no leverage. Their hands were empty while yours were held by something unseen. That contrast broke them more than any confrontation could. Their fear was not of exposure. It was of powerlessness. Your victory was not loud. It was not messy. It was clean, sharp, and undeniable. They wanted to paint you as the weak one, the victim, the nav, a fool. Instead, you walked away untouchable, your dignity untouched, your silence preserved. They wanted chaos. You gave them calm. They wanted destruction. You gave them survival. They wanted proof of your collapse. You became proof of their failure. That reversal is what they fear most. They cannot explain it, they cannot understand it, and they cannot destroy it, because what they feared was never your strength alone. It was the force standing with you that they could not name. Psychology teaches that exposure changes power dynamics instantly. Once the truth comes out, the roles shift. They lose the mask and you gain clarity. But divine protection magnifies that shift. Instead of being scarred, you shine. Instead of being diminished, you grow. Instead of being destroyed, you stand stronger. That difference destroys them. They know that secrets should have broken you, but instead they broke themselves. They know their scheme should have left you cornered, but instead it cornered them. They know their lies should have lived, but instead they rotted the moment light touched them. The protector made sure of that, and they will never recover from the humiliation of it. What terrifies them most is that the exposure is permanent. They cannot hide again. They cannot rebuild the mask. Everyone who matters saw the cracks, and everyone who doesn't matter no longer counts. Their fear now is not just the past being revealed, it is the future being haunted. Every step they take, they will remember the force that stood with you. Every scheme they try, they will feel its shadow blocking them. Every attempt at arrogance will collapse under paranoia. You do not have to remind them. The protector will. Their fear is eternal, because once a secret is exposed under divine light, it cannot ever return to darkness. They thought you stood alone. That was their first mistake. They studied your silence, mistook it for isolation, and convinced themselves you had no one to stand with you. Yet the kind of loyalty that protects you is not loud. It does not broadcast itself in speeches or announcements. True loyalty is invisible until tested. And when harm is planned against you, it steps forward like a shadow that suddenly turns solid. To those who plotted, it looks like divinity. They cannot understand how allies appeared where they swore there were none. They cannot comprehend how your defense rose without you lifting a finger. The unseen loyalty shakes them, because what they cannot map, they cannot control. That is why they call it divine. It makes them feel small, exposed, powerless in the face of something they never calculated. Your enemies always believe they are clever when they isolate you. They use manipulation to cut ties, lies to poison bonds, silence to create distance. They assume if they strip you of allies, you will be easier to break. What they never account for is loyalty that does not need constant proof. Loyalty that hides quietly, waiting. The invisible ones are the most dangerous because they move when the threat is real, not when the audience is watching. You experienced this when schemes designed to corner you suddenly collapsed. Not because you shouted, but because someone loyal stepped where you never expected. To your enemies, this looks supernatural. It feels like the universe itself intervened. But it was loyalty all along, hidden silent, sharp. Invisible loyalty terrifies because it cannot be traced. They expect protection to look obvious. Families standing in front of you, friends declaring their allegiance, armies surrounding you. But your loyalty came in whispers, in shadows, in small movements unseen. It could be someone who never betrayed your name even when bribed. It could be someone who passed you information while pretending neutrality. It could be someone who silently redirected a weapon meant for you. These quiet acts of loyalty seem divine to those who cannot imagine bonds that survive without performance. They fear it because it is unpredictable. They do not know who is loyal to you until it is too late. That uncertainty destroys them before the battle even begins. There is a psychology in why they panic when invisible loyalty shows itself. Manipulators believe loyalty is bought or coerced. They expect it to crumble when pressure arrives. They project their own greed onto others, convinced everyone has a price. That is why they cannot understand loyalty born from respect, loyalty forged in shared fire, loyalty invisible because it does not need applause. When it finally rises to defend you, they see divinity because they cannot rationalize it. Their arrogance collapses in the face of what they cannot buy or bend. It feels like an act of God, but it is simply the strength of bonds they never valued, and that terrifies them more than any confrontation. The most haunting part of invisible loyalty is timing. It never shows itself early. It waits until the blade is raised, until the scheme is set, until your enemy believes victory is certain. Then it steps forward, and the entire plan disintegrates. That timing makes it feel divine. To those who planned harm, it looks like intervention from beyond this world. They thought they had every angle covered. But the unseen hand they never considered tilts the board. You do not need armies when loyalty is patient. You do not need noise when loyalty is strategic. One act at the right moment erases months of their planning. That is what haunts them long after. The fact that something they could not see waited quietly for the perfect strike. Invisible loyalty makes you look untouchable. They gossip, they betray, they circle you with plans to watch you collapse. Yet every time, the collapse never comes. They whisper to themselves, wondering why. They call it luck. They call it destiny. They call it divine. But you know the truth. It is loyalty working in silence, redirecting storms, breaking traps before they snap, shielding you in ways you never even noticed. That is what scares them most. They cannot fight what they cannot see, and so they live paranoid, unsure who among them is the shield protecting you. Invisible loyalty turns their arrogance into paranoia, their confidence into fear, their certainty into collapse. You carry yourself differently once you recognize this power. You no longer chase validation, no longer beg for proof of loyalty, no longer fear being alone, because you understand that the most dangerous loyalty is not the one displayed publicly, but the one that hides until the moment of need. It may be one person, it may be many, but it exists, and it gives you a kind of quiet power that feels otherworldly to those who hate you. They see your resilience and cannot believe it is human. They see your survival and call it divine. What they name divinity is simply loyalty they could never inspire for themselves. Contrast reveals their failure. They try to buy loyalty with bribes only to watch it evaporate when the money is gone. They try to demand loyalty with fear, only to watch it disappear when someone braver arrives. Their arrogance prevents them from understanding why people stand with you without being asked, why loyalty to you survives storms and schemes. That gap is humiliating. It forces them to see that their power was never real, because no one stands behind them willingly. You, on the other hand, stand shielded by invisible loyalty that terrifies them more than open defiance. It is proof of your difference, proof of your strength, proof of your reach. Invisible loyalty does not just protect you. It elevates you. It makes your presence feel heavier, your silence feel sharper, your moves feel unstoppable. Because when others cannot explain your survival, they attribute it to forces beyond their comprehension. They call it divine because their logic cannot hold it. They are left haunted by the thought that something greater stands with you. That thought is your crown. It is the aura they cannot erase. Their schemes may continue, but each one will die under the same shadow. They will never know who is loyal to you, when they will appear, or how. That paranoia will eat them alive, and you will never need to explain. They thought they had cornered you with precision, surrounding you with traps built from lies and manipulation. They believed no one would stand for you, no ally would rise, no hand would lift to shield you. They calculated everything except the one thing they could never account for: protection that did not come from people, but from something eternal. That kind of shield is not seen, not touched, not bribed, and not broken. It arrives when human help is gone, when every door is locked, when every option is closed, and yet you remain standing. That survival unsettled them more than any defense could, because what they faced was not a person. It was eternity itself, wrapped around you like armor they could not pierce. You felt it in the nights you should have collapsed, yet somehow you rose again. You carried scars they thought would cripple you, but you moved through them with strength that felt borrowed from another realm. They wondered why you never shattered, why you did not lose your mind, why you smiled after betrayals designed to destroy you. The answer was not found in human loyalty, but in eternal force. That protection was not loud, it did not scream for recognition, but it was undeniable. You did not break because you were never fighting alone. Something eternal stood with you, and the eternal does not bow to the temporary games of manipulators. The psychology of fear explains their reaction. Humans fear what they cannot measure. They can measure your anger, your patience, your silence, but they cannot measure what shields you when their attacks fail. Each scheme they built ended in collapse, not because you countered with strategy, but because eternity itself refused to let you fall. They saw it in the way accidents seemed to favor you, in the way truth always surfaced, in the way their lies rotted faster than expected. They thought luck carried you, but luck has limits. What you had was beyond limits, and that truth terrified them, because eternal protection cannot be tricked, and it cannot be stopped. Some protections are not earned through relationships, but through alignment. You aligned with resilience, with truth, with silence, with dignity. Those choices drew eternal protection toward you. People betrayed, people abandoned, people mocked. But eternity kept you hidden, kept you lifted, kept you armed with calm. That is why you never needed to prove yourself with noise. The eternal shield is invisible, but it shows itself in outcomes. The enemies panicked not because of your words, but because their own weapons turned dull when pointed at you. They saw their plans unravel like thread, and they could not explain it. What they call mysterious is simply the eternal reminding them of their limits. The beauty of eternal protection is timing. It does not rush. It lets arrogance overreach. It lets manipulators believe they are untouchable. It lets liars believe their secrets will last. Then, at the right moment, it collapses everything. You saw this in the way truth exposed itself without your effort, in the way enemies revealed themselves without you lifting a hand. That kind of precision is not human. It is eternal. It terrifies those who scheme, because it shows them they are not the masters of fate. They cannot predict when the shield will strike, only that it always does. And the uncertainty eats them alive. They wanted you to depend on them, to believe your safety came from their approval, their presence, their authority. But you learned something greater. Some protections are not tied to human hands. They are written into existence itself. They cannot be revoked, cannot be bought, cannot be stolen. That realization freed you. You stopped begging for loyalty from the disloyal. You stopped fearing abandonment. You stopped trembling when people left, because you saw that eternity never left. Even in betrayal, you were held. Even in silence, you were carried. That realization is liberation, because once you know you are guarded by eternity, no person can ever convince you that you are powerless again. The arrogant cannot accept this. They want to believe power is theirs alone. They cannot stand the thought of protection beyond their reach. So when they see you untouched, they scramble for explanations. They call it luck. They call it coincidence. They call it unfair. What they will never admit is that eternity was always against them. Their panic grows with every failed scheme, because they know the shield is not temporary, it is permanent. It does not expire when relationships end. It does not vanish when people turn their backs. It is always present, always patient, always ready to expose the arrogant and preserve the steady. That truth is what drives them mad. The greatest strength of eternal protection is that it is invisible until needed. You walked through fire without burns, storms without drowning, betrayals without breaking. They looked at you and saw someone ordinary, yet they could not figure out why you kept surviving what should have ended you. That survival looked divine to them because it was not human in origin. They were right to fear it, because what shields you is not bound by the rules they play by. They play chess with tricks and masks, while eternity plays with inevitability, and inevitability always wins. Your presence now carries a weight they cannot explain. It is not your words that scare them, but the unseen force they sense around you. They know harming you comes with consequences, even if they cannot name them. They saw schemes collapse, reputations burn, and lies dissolve the moment they touched you. They cannot explain it, so they fear it. That fear is your crown. That fear is the proof of eternal protection. You do not need to threaten, because eternity already made the threat. You do not need to defend, because eternity already stood in front of you. That is what terrifies them most. You do not fight with weapons, you fight with inevitability. They thought your resilience was self-contained, something they could study, mock, and eventually crush if they pushed hard enough. They believed endurance was only about willpower, about how much you could take before breaking. What rattled them to their core was realizing your strength was not standing alone. It was amplified by a network of unseen hands lifting you in silence. Every time you fell, someone unknown helped you rise. Every time you were isolated, someone invisible whispered clarity back into your ear. They could not track it, could not bribe it, could not silence it. That unseen support was the real terror. Because when enemies think they are fighting just you, and then they discover an entire hidden web standing with you, their arrogance dissolves into dread. Your enemies always overestimate their ability to isolate. They plan carefully, removing allies, poisoning bonds, convincing you that you are alone. They mistake your quietness for abandonment, your distance for loneliness. But what they never account for are the loyalties that hide in shadows. The people who say nothing but defend you in rooms you will never enter. The ones who cover your name when others try to stain it. The unseen hands do not need to declare their loyalty. They move quietly, effectively, striking when necessary. This is what unnerves those who scheme against you. They do not know how many there are, who they are, or when they will move. All they know is that their efforts to corner you collapse, and the collapse feels like divine interference. Every manipulator believes they can control the battlefield by controlling the pieces they can see. But they fail to realize that the unseen is always stronger. You do not stand because you endured alone. You stand because the network beneath you carried weight you never could. That network is invisible until it is tested. It appears when lies fall apart too quickly, when truths surface from unexpected places, when betrayals are exposed without your involvement. They cannot understand why their secrets leak, why their control weakens, why their plans collapse. It is because unseen hands were pulling strings they never noticed. Resilience alone is frightening, but resilience supported by a hidden force is catastrophic for their arrogance. The psychology behind this is cruel. Humans fear the invisible more than the visible. They can fight what they see, but the unseen haunts them. They lie awake wondering who is loyal to you. They question their allies, suspecting betrayal. They live paranoid because the unseen cannot be bribed, cannot be silenced, cannot be predicted. That paranoia is your victory. They are no longer focused on destroying you. They are focused on surviving the unseen network around you. That shift weakens them before you even move. It drains their confidence, corrodes their trust in others, and unravels their schemes. The unseen destroys them faster than you ever could. What unsettles them is not just that unseen loyalty exists. It is that it is bigger than their influence. They work tirelessly to convince themselves you had nothing left. No allies, no defenders, no protection. Yet every time you walked through fire without burning, they saw outcomes that made no sense. Betrayals that should have buried you turned into revelations that freed you. Lies that should have destroyed your name exposed them instead. Doors that should have remained shut opened just when you needed them. To them, this looks divine, unfair, inexplicable. But you know it is the network of unseen hands, invisible yet always present, dismantling every scheme from angles they never saw. Resilience by itself can be dismissed. They can call it stubbornness. They can call it luck. They can call it denial. But when resilience is paired with invisible support, they have no explanation. They cannot rationalize why their control fades so quickly, why their traps never hold, why their lies always unravel. They panic because they realize they are not fighting one person. They are fighting a collective, silent army that owes them nothing and owes you everything. That army does not announce itself. It does not stand in formation. It does not need recognition. It moves invisibly, and invisibility is what makes it terrifying. Your strength is multiplied by trust that cannot be seen. That is what they fail to anticipate. They thought they had mapped every angle of your life, but they missed the invisible threads binding you to forces stronger than them. This is why their arrogance looks pathetic in hindsight. They thought they were playing chess with pawns and kings, but they never saw the board beneath the board. They never saw the hidden alliances, the quiet support, the invisible loyalty that tilted the game in your favor without you lifting a hand. By the time they realized it, the game was already over. The unseen had already won. The greatest humiliation for them is realizing they were never fighting fair. Not because you cheated, but because life itself tilted toward you through hands they could not touch. Their exposure came not from your outbursts, but from invisible whispers that revealed their secrets. Their collapse came not from your revenge, but from unseen protection that denied them victory. They cannot comprehend this, so they call it divine. They call it fate. They call it mysterious. What they do not want to admit is that loyalty beyond their vision exists, and it sided with you. That admission would destroy the illusion of their power, so they mask it with excuses. But you know better. You no longer need to defend yourself with words. Their paranoia does the work for you. They now suspect everyone around them, unsure of who stands quietly in your corner. Every ally they have becomes a potential threat. Every conversation feels dangerous. Every step forward feels unstable. That kind of paranoia is worse than any punishment you could design. It eats at them daily, slowly, until they crumble from within. And you remain still, untouched, carried by unseen hands they cannot reach. Their destruction comes not from your strike, but from their fear of invisible loyalty.